Just to let you go. That's good. I'm good. I think we're good. It's up to you. Honestly.
Good.
Yeah, I don't think.
Jay,
Yeah.
you may need to start the meeting. Jimmy said he might be running about 5 minutes late.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Where's Robert? He was up here. He's hiding somewhere. Well, he walked. That's all.
Did you get any further away?
Is he in there?
Tactical position.
He's hiding in the conference room.
If it was me,
He's up here somewhere.
you want to stay at 5. They're just afraid. Where's the exit?
In case you get anything, Jim, I'm right here for you.
Okay. 2 weeks, maybe, no problem. 2 weeks.
He started that.
I should have said that, but when I was kidding, I found myself out here. I've never done one. Hey, the only time I had to run a meeting with Mayor Pro Tem, I got 2 days.
You got
That's
two
right when you
I was
walk
walking
in.
the door, I got 1 to 2 minutes. My first
Yes.
meeting with Mayor Pro Tem. I probably should have.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
You did fine though.
I really hated the fact that the aftermath this morning.
I noticed it when I came in, make sure it was in.
Getting the habit of voices, but it bothers me.
I'll try to remind you to soon.
I put it in the drawer with my
There you go, yeah. It's got, yeah. Report and thank you.
And a magazine.
And next.
That was my semi.
Sit there and be nice.
I always think she does them so slow.
Is anyone else?
No, he's probably in HR if
That's
he's
what I'm
up here.
thinking.
He has the after-hours cut, which I can never remember.
Yeah, I don't.
we'll call the budget workshop number 1 for Tuesday, July the 2nd, 2024. It's 5:30 p.m. here at City Commission Chambers. Call the meeting to order. Would you please rise for the invocation and a pledge? Heavenly Father, we ask that you watch over this group tonight and you help us make good decisions for the city of Leesburg in their finances. We do this in your name. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hand it over to Al.
You ready?
Yep,
All right.
go ahead and let's start the fun.
All right. Well, this presentation's pretty much is the same as they have been for the last several years, maybe with a couple deviations in how we develop the draft budget for y'all. So tonight, obviously, our schedule is to talk about the general fund. The general fund, all those things listed up on the list, the city commission budget, public outreach, administration, police, fires, the lion's share of the general fund, public works, recreation, all those funds that are funded with general revenues. Tuesday, we get, I think, probably have a little more significant, well, this is a significant, all the discussions are significant, right? I think a lot of times when we get to the general fund, we look to capital improvements and different things that we want to do that make an annual significant impact on community. So those discussions are Tuesday next week, and then Thursday we start hitting it up with some of the other enterprise funds. So this year, kind of the biggest difference, I think, is our initial prompt of the commission on where some of your goals were. So I wanted to put this together, and I added my recommendation in there, if you remember, for last year. There's some similarities in there, believe it or not, but I also tried to associate kind of goals with what respective funds they're in. So like, for example, I'm going to skip Commissioner Berry right now. She's not here. Commissioner Cannell responded with advertising for South Leesburg and lower millage rate. Those are obviously general fund issues. Commissioner Reisman, beautification, code enforcement, additional Wi-Fi, branding, promoting Leesburg, downtown marketing lights, and funding FSL program. Most of those are all general funds. Let me go to like downtown marketing lights. I put special and general in there, probably CRA funds too. So special revenues. So remember our funds. We got the general fund, which is the general revenues, the CRA funds, which are the incremental revenues, and then the special revenues are essentially, for our purposes, for capital projects, DST revenues. There's some other impact fee stuff that we'll talk about, some cash and those type of things. So those are different areas where potentially we could fund some of those things. Infrastructure management from Bury, which that's obviously pretty broad, but that's going to be enterprise funds, so water, sewer, electric, gas. Also recreational improvements. Some of these, the Susan Street Sleepy Hollow Marina, kind of already on the agenda. That's pretty much funded with special stuff with grants, so we'll get into more of those discussions. Peterson was enhanced public safety, refocus on downtown, getting back to the parking projects, the Market Street projects, implementation of the Tropic purchase. So in the respect of funds, Commissioner Berry still isn't here, so I'm going to go ahead and hit hers. She wanted to introduce to the commission a concept for a wall that would protective wall that would go down, kind of as an addition to the Susan Street project, but would essentially run the trail. That's like the extension of Red Raider Road, if you will. City Hall security, enhanced police protection, continuation of the home grant, the John L. Johnson Park restroom, and summer tutoring programs. As a broad overcap from the commission responses, and I think you guys gave those to me probably over the last 90 days. Some of those things we're already doing, like for example, the Wi-Fi. We try to grow that a little bit each year incrementally. Some of them we weren't able to tackle. We weren't able to tackle due to we need to discuss these things Tuesday night, because I think what we're going to see when we start breaking into CIPs is some competing demands, and so we're going to have to collectively come up with some concepts on how to shift some blocks or make cuts or shuffle the deck or whatever synonym you want to use. But downtown market lights, Market Street, parking, implementation of Tropic. Susan Street even has some conflicts in there too. So I think we're going to have to shuffle the deck on how we move forward with some of these things and rank them. And that's probably more of a Tuesday conversation. And then I also wanted to throw in some of the input that we talked about ending last fiscal year, which was from me. My hopes was that as we moved into the fiscal year 25 budget, the new improvements, this is really the first year that we're really realizing a significant input from the villages in terms of their growth and all that new revenue. My hope was to kind of split that three ways: increase public safety, hopefully have some money for general fund, and I'll talk about that in more detail later, but for general fund, capital improvement spending, and then lower the electric transfer. I'll talk more about electric transfer in detail as we get into the project. Do you guys have any comments on that? They're pretty broad, but they're kind of served as the perimeter where we hit. From that list, though, the number one thing that I think that's the resounding issue is the enhancement of public safety. I think that speaks to crime throughout the community. That speaks to an ability to tackle homelessness, now coupled with the new law that the state legislature passed. So I think that's a significant issue. And I think especially at the police department, we really start at a disadvantage because from a staffing level, for years and years, the city has not funded the police department to levels that other communities have. And so there is a bit of a catch-up game, I think, with regard to that. And as we dig into the numbers, you will see it quickly. So with that, let's move into this year's budget and growth. So the growth is primarily villages investment. We've talked a lot about, we've had 1 million PUDs. The number is about 40,000 lots that have been planned. Of that, the villages is a big chunk, 14,185 to be exact. So that leaves the remainder of 30 some odd thousand lots that are non-villages related. So if you look at our taxable growth, so we put it in taxable value first. Our initial estimate from June 1 was 38.18%, one of the biggest growers in the county. As of July 1, that number went up a little bit more. So our taxable value as of June 1 from last year's ending at 2.5 billion taxable value to 3.4. That number is about 3.5 now. I'll talk to you about that again at the end. So that's a gross of almost $1 billion in a single year. So that's a 38.18%. However, when you dig into that number, it's pretty much all villages growth. So the next chart I wanted to show you is this chart down here. And it kind of, the percent of taxable value goes back to the taxable value assessed percentage. So of the $968 million, so almost $1 billion, that is pretty much all from the villages. So 30 of the 38%, 30 of that growth is the villages. So, that's, in inverse there. 70% of that number is villages. So the villages is an input to us of $750 million, $750,000,000 of the taxable growth is attributable to the villages growth. On a side note, of about the 3,254 lots that were supposed to go in the Villages of West Lake, it's about 27, what was the number, Brandy? 22,742 lots are accounted for in this budget. So we've got about, what's the math, about 500 more lots to look for next year. Core Leesburg, this is the big number, 5%. I think by all practical purposes, this doesn't compare to what you're seeing in terms of PUD approval rates, right? We're seeing PUDs come in all the time. But for all practical purposes, that doesn't mean those PUDs won't grow. That doesn't mean the discussions that we're having and concerns about PUDs won't happen, but it means it's not, I don't think it's as accelerated as we think, because we're seeing these big numbers which relate back to the villages. But when that villages number goes around, if Core Leesburg stays and those lots that you've approved, the PUDs, stays in this 5% range, then you're going to see this big giant number really trail off and probably look like more of the rest of the county, more of a Mount Dora growth number, or even for that matter, if you look at Claremont growth numbers, it probably is going to start dropping back to the 7.5% to 10% rate-ish. So that's doubling what it's showing right now. The other area, remember, when we get these lump sum numbers, it includes the CRAs. So remember, we got to pull that CRA growth out, and then that gets shuffled over the deck to the CRA funds. So from that, there's about 4% of the 38% of CRA growth. It rounded up there 39. So the general fund sees about 38% of the 35% of the 39% growth-ish, if you will. But now let's transfer that to revenue. So remember, the revenue formula is your assessed value, and you count on receiving 95% of your assessed value. By the way, that's statutory. So the formula is 95% of your taxable value divided by 1,000 times your millage rate. Now that translates into dollars. So if we do this based on the current millage rate, 3.4752, the villages brings in $2.5 million. By the way, that's what we thought at the beginning about where it is, and so there's still another 500 houses out there. When this is all said and done, it'll probably be about 3 million. So that's exceeding actually the portfolio, because remember, Villages revenue is now going to break down into two other big sources. So the first one being ad valorem, which is what you're seeing here. The second one will be utility and franchise fees. And then as the state catches up with population growths, we'll see more in state shared revenues, and we'll see more in local option gas tax, but that's going to be competing with some of the other formulas. So really, utility, franchise, and property taxes is where you're going to see the lion's share of that, and then maybe a little bit more discretionary sales tax and some other state shared revenues. But that's really the lion's share where you see the growth. Our budget really focuses, we tinked up some of those budget numbers, and we'll get into that in a bit, but not a whole lot. Core Leesburg new growth, about 410,000, and then CRA growth is 360,000. So that, remember, that gets shuffled off into the CRAs, and we'll talk about that later. So all in all, at the current rate, about $2.9 million of new ad valorem growth. So now let me muddy the waters. There's four primary areas in this year's $37 million budget where we see, I'm using the word significant. And as we go through the details, you'll see some ups and you'll see some downs. But of significant revenue increases for fiscal year 25. Obviously, and this is at 3.4, so at the current millage rate. So ad valorem taxes up 2.9 million. Utility taxes up 545,000. Franchise fees, primarily that's Duke and Villages numbers. And oh, by the way, we're in a little bit of an argument with Duke, because I don't think Duke's been keeping up to speed with counting the growth that's coming in there. So we have weekly arguments with Duke to have them speed up on their count, and they're in, quote unquote, an internal audit as we speak. I'm going to tell you, I think they're about 6 months behind. they really have no excuse for that because in 18, Brad's not here. He's not a taker. But I want to say 1819 timeframe is when we did the territorial agreement where we took some Sumter County property that was Duke and we gave them the North 470 property because the concept from the villages was they wanted like villages to be served by the same utility supplier. So all that means Duke knows we flip-flop these properties. Duke knows we flip-flopped these properties years ago. It went before the Public Service Commission. Duke didn't count the new meters that are spinning. And remember, by the assessed value numbers, as of December 31st, 2023, there was 2,752 houses that were on the tax rolls. And so if there are houses on the tax rolls, that means that's a base bill and a meter spinning.
So how do we calculate, how do we add that in?
So how did we come up with this number on franchise growth? The average bill is 1,000 kilowatts. The average Duke bill is 165 kilowatts. So it's the average Duke bill is $165 a month on 1,000 kilowatts. 165 times 6% times 12 times, I think 2,700 is $500,000. So it's an estimate. It's still thinking. Well, we need to get that. And if we don't get that, then we probably will need to be litigious. But I think
why pay today what we can put off till tomorrow.
I think so, and I think the other thing I would caution the commission about, this isn't our issue, but this is where the IOUs kind of hit I'm going to say municipal corporations with a black eye. Oh, that's not our fee. That's your city taxing you. And they'll tell you that whether you're an electric city or a non-electric city. So when all the villagers complain or if they get back charged for franchise fees that they didn't pay, Duke is going to blame it on us. And the truth of the matter is Duke's behind, and every municipal corporation in the state has a franchise fee on electric.
Get our money.
That's way digression. The other big issue, the other big revenue to look at is the fire assessment fee. This is a growth of $335,000, rounding up for you. Remember, though, that pieces with what we've already collected, and that the major growth in the fire assessment fee does end up going back to the villages. We'll talk about that in a little while anyway. So of all the major growth at the current millage rate, we're looking at about $4.3 million new dollars on how to spend it. Let me digress just 2 seconds because we want to compare 3.4 to 3.2 in millage rates. The 3.2 is the millage rate. So if you go with a rollback millage rate, where essentially the big thing that changes is instead of collecting 2.9 in ad valorem revenue, you're going to collect about 2.1. So instead of 4.3 in new revenues, you're going to have 3.5. So the delta is you leave about $810,000 on the table. So not quite $1 million. All right, those are the revenues. Major expense highlights, I think, break down into 4 categories. If you go back later on and you start subtracting these numbers and redoing it, you're going to say, Menor, what are you talking about? So I agree. What I tried to do in these numbers is I tried to break it down easy. These numbers are going to unfold a lot of different ways, and probably myself, if you ask me a specific question, I'm going to have to think about it. But the purpose of how I broke these numbers down was to just really boil down where that new money is going. So if you add these 4 categories together, it's going to equal about that $4.3 million in new revenue. So the first place, increased police.
Not the rollback, right?
Correct. I'm gonna come back to you on a comparison and come up with, you know, where the deltas are and where y'all may want to go. So everything is based on trying to make a significant increase in general services for the city of Leesburg in these 4 areas. Number one is police services. The police department budget increases 1.5 million bucks. And where does it go? The lion's share of it goes to personnel, probably in the neighborhood of about 1.2 million. I'm only showing 700,000 now. But if you go to those personnel lines, you're going to see increases really in retirement and other benefits. And when you roll all that together, plus cars, plus this, plus that, you get to 1.5. And I kept these numbers. Again, another reason I boiled these things down was because if you say, we want to get to rollback or meet halfway between the middle, we got to do it in blocks. And so you're not going to catch, total blocks. So there's a method to the madness there. So the increase of 12 officers increases us from 72 sworn officers to 80, 72, 84. So where did we get that number? We got it from the police department. The police department basically says if we're going to grow police officers, we have to grow in incremental blocks to cover shifts, to cover administrative officers, and we have to work the increase based on the hierarchy and based on scheduling. So they needed it in increments of 6. So we started off the budget with 6 brand new officers, all the associated promotions and blah, blah, blah. And bottom line was we couldn't afford it.
We started with 12.
Right, 12. I said the wrong. We started out with 12 effective
starting
October
October
1.
yes.
And bottom line there is 2 problems. A, we couldn't afford it. And B, come October 1, we knew we're not going to have 12 new people. We weren't going to have shifts. So in there is inherently bad budgeting because we're over budgeting in expense versus revenue. So how do we start trying to make this affordable? We came up with kind of a step plan. So October 1, 3 new officers and an internal promotion, 1 lieutenant. So we are creating a lieutenant position. So it's 12 new officers, but as we get to that rank of lieutenant and above or sergeants and above, that's typically going to be most potentially an internal officer getting bumped up to the higher rank, which is a promotion for them, which then opens up another lower position. So not only is there the officer, but then we'll have more hiring than just, I think it's an initial 9. Is it 8 PO1s or something like that? What's the number? First, Brent?
You're going to get 4 on October 1. Is that what you're saying?
No. If I confused you, we'll come back. So essentially, the plan would go 3 new officers, 1 lieutenant, effective October 1. April 1, halfway through the fiscal year, 1 more lieutenant, 1 more sergeant, which is kind of preparing the supervisory roles and the rank officers. And then by June 1, we bring in the last of the 12 new officers, which would be 6. The good thing to that is it's within our parameters. The bad thing is the half of this expense to grow the department, the 7 plus the 5, the 1.2 million bucks, we're going to need to wait on that. So we're kind of loading the fiscal year 24 budget, waiting for new growth to come in next year. I'm going to say that's reasonable. That's the police department, ostensibly. The next big increase is the fire department. I think it's kind of arguable whether adding our proposed 6 new firefighters, does that increase services? I think that's probably arguable. No, we don't increase services. The biggest complaint, though, that we hear from the fire department, we hear it during the fiscal year, and pretty much every year for the last 3 years at least, we hear from the IFF that Leesburg Fire Department, especially the Griffin and Canal stations, are the busiest stations by far throughout Lake. Statistics support that. And that our service force has a tremendous amount of workload, which doesn't allow them to take their scheduled and earned PTO off. So the biggest thing we hear is burnout, overworked. They need to have more rest versus the high-risk performance stuff that they do, okay? So the response back to the fire department and this budget, barring where you guys go, is to change this, we need to decrease hours of work. I'm going to use round numbers. The fire department, IFF members work about 2,900 hours a year. Our proposal back to them to give them the break that they're asking for is to work less hours but increase their pay. For us, it's a net neutral 4%. To them, it's a 4% increase with less work. So instead of the 2,900 hours, it's about 2,400 hours. To do that, again, increments. We have an ABC shift, so like the police department, we need to build it in increments for us to be able to cover lower work hours without seeing overtime go crazy and get people out. Chief Mara thinks you need about 6 additional firefighters to get to the number to give a more, I'm not going to say modest, a lower working requirement for the fire department. So the increase to the fire department, there's $1 million there. The next big one is reduction of electric transfer. The biggest reason, there's 2 major reasons for why I continue to come back to the City Commission almost now on a yearly basis, encouraging you to reduce the transfer, is twofold. A, pressures from the state legislature. This pressure from the state legislature for the last 2 sessions has been that electric cities need to look more like normal municipal corporations. So there's 600 municipal corporations or so in the state of Florida. 48 of us are municipal electric utilities, so we're a special breed. Some of us are pretty significant municipal electric utilities like KUA, JEA, OUC, Lakeland Electric. Some of us are smaller ones like Fort Meade, Cluis, and Leesburg, probably about middle ground as far as customer load and money spent. But I believe that fight is going to continue. That fight is demanding that electric cities look more like non-municipal corporations. And really, we've had a humongous ally in the state Senate with Senator Baxley. Senator Baxley is now termed out, so we will have a new senator. This is not a representation of the new senator that will be representing our area, but it is a representation of the seniority that our new senator will not have. Senator Baxley was highly regarded state legislature, served as high as you could almost in the House, same in his Senate service. He was from Ocala. He was a friend of Municipal Electric. This last session, he kept legislation off the floor that was in the House. So there is question, there is concern. What is this legislation going to look like? With that concern continuing to grow, we really need to continue, even though I think we've probably been one of the most proactive municipal electric utilities in the state as far as reducing our transfer. We have to continue to keep doing this. We have to continue to get the electric fund influence out of the general fund. I think it will be a critical element for us moving forward before it's forced upon us. And if you look at the legislation that's been passed the last couple of years, it's forcing the changes that I'm recommending to you. 6% caps, having an authority, having representation for your electric customers that aren't corporate residents. I think that's what it equals. So number 1, we're being forced to do it. Number 2, this will be the conversation on the 11th. The electric fund, unfortunately, can't afford the significant transfer for a number of reasons. I'll be super brief here, but it's ostensibly inflation, personnel cost increases that are forced by the market, and some investments where growth hasn't spun meteors yet. I think that time frame does eventually end. I think the Leesburg electric service box fills to where some of the pressures on growth won't be as great as we've seen in the past few years because we're in a box, and when the box filled, I don't see our neighboring territories, Duke, Seco, trading territory with us anymore unless, you know, they're at an advantage or unless it's a customer for customer thing. So I don't really see territorial agreements changing the box. So the market has affected the electric fund. State legislative priorities has affected the legislative fund. That means we need to continue to reduce our transfer. 1.5 million. Before I leave this, let me tell you what this represents. A $1.5 million reduction in the transfer means the general fund will receive about $1.6 million from the electric fund. $1.6 million represents a 6% franchise fee. So in other words, if we did not have our own municipal electric utility system, we'd be having this Duke argument, or, you know, we wouldn't be having the Duke argument, but the Duke phenomenon, we would have our 6% franchise fee on incorporated customers, on incorporated sales. So the inverse of our utility is 60% of our customers, of our 27,000 customers, are outside the corporate limits, but 60% of our sales are inside the corporate limits. So that means if we didn't have the utility, we would be getting 6% of electric sales on the sales that are in our corporate limits. So if this came down and you could only transfer 6% based on who your corporate limits are, the transfer of $1.6 million equals that demand. And it's a reduction of 1.5. So everything that's presented in the general fund is saying, worst case scenario, we can only take 6% that represents our customer base inside corporate limits. If we accomplish that, that is significant. There's another little thing I'll talk to you about, but we're going to save that for electric fund. Okay, so after police increase, fire increase, electric transfer decrease, we're left with about $1.47 million of stuff. So where is all that stuff going? About $550,000 to a projected 4% pay increase, $412,000 for the village's fire assessment fee. So you saw that growth in the revenue. Most of that fire assessment fee goes back to the villages. $175,000 in our want to increase the fleet lease. Everybody remembers the fleet lease, right? So we take a vehicle, we depreciate it over the value, so say 5 years, and then whatever department pays the value of that 5-year depreciation. Now the depreciation is going to change based on what type of equipment it is, but so for simple math, a car, 5 years, so if it's a $50,000 car, the lease payment is $10,000. That lease payment goes into the fleet fund that builds the cash to buy a replacement vehicle. And so we talk about this every year. So what we're trying to do is we take that number, every vehicle, depreciated value, we add it up. And then we divide that amongst all the departments. And we've been at 50%, 50%, 50% of that number. We moved up to 75% a couple years ago, and now we're getting to the point to where the fleet fund cash is reducing to where we think we need to bump up and get to 100%. So the full value of the depreciated value over the years plus the cars. So that's how we get that number. So to increase from 75% to 100% fleet lease, that's hitting the general fund in the amount of $175,000. General liability insurance is also going up. We impose that on ourselves, but it matches with how we do this, about $97,000. And then all the other stuff, increase in chemicals at the pool, paper is up, utility bills are up, all the other little stuff, like why did this budget line change $20,000? And you know, and that in the budget, in that line item that looks big, all those crazy little numbers that we'll break down into detail, it's about 250 grand. So the purpose of this slide is to show you we have major expense blocks where we're trying to significantly change the service level. So if you add all this up, back to kind of where we were in revenues, about 4.3 million in new revenues, police expansion, fire expansion, reduction in transfer, other items. So that's about $5.6 million on the wish list for a deficit of about 1.3 million bucks. So put everything in the hopper, plus this, minus that. This is kind of, I'm not trying to be fuzzy. I'm not trying to be fuzzy. I'm trying to just to make it concise and clear. So we have significant programming increases. We have significant new revenue. And when we put it all together, your budget right now is in a deficit of 250,000 bucks. So that's not a crazy number. I presented it to you that way to kind of show you where we're at. And if you feel that these programs are where we need to go, that's where we're at. Now remember, that number is going to change every 1st, July 1st, August 1st, September 1st, and then there'll even be a final October 1st. That $250,000 number has already changed. I alluded to that a little bit because the assessed value's gone up a couple $100 million bucks, which equals, so the 250 is already reduced to 142. Yeah. So about 100 grand. That's why, I wanted to show you have a deficit, but I also wanted to show you that that deficit's not crazy and that I wouldn't make any rash decisions on trying to manipulate how do we get 250 grand, because my guess is by the time we get to September and the budget hearings, that number will probably catch up with just the assessor's office ratcheting up the numbers. Remember, they do review and review and review, and so I think we'll catch up. Okay.
Mayor, could you go back to this breakout of the four? That one. Clarification, please. So with the increase of fire services as of October 1, how many firefighters would that be? I mean, just roughly. Can you give me just an idea?
Okay,
and the same for the
we're at
police.
48 now. Is that right, Chief? 45 now, so it'd be 45 plus 6.
Okay.
I'm also, let me digress on this topic too. I didn't want to get bogged down in particulars. But but that question jogs memory, and so let me get this out. At the last commission meeting, you approved the PBA contract. The PBA contract called for a 4% wage increase. It did not call for increasing officers. Having said that, we did negotiate in good faith that our attempt was to bring on more officers. So I do think that went a long way to having the police department capitulate to the 4% increase, which we, of course, thought was reasonable. But I think the other side of the table said, yay, the city's finally getting more officers. That's going to give us a better way to accomplish some of the issues, and that we're not so stressed on the police side. The fire side is similar. They are asking for 18% increases. We're coming back to the table with them with, no, that's an unreasonable request. We think that your pay is reasonable. Reasonable is the factual definition is 97% of the market average. The market average is like departments for our region, which is most of the cities in Lake, a couple in Sumter, and the villages. Not cities in Tampa, not cities in South Florida where cost of living is high, and not cities where the city does transport. Everybody understands that, right? There's a bifurcation in fire services of transporting patients to the hospital versus treating them at the site. When you get into the transport business, which in Lake County, the county does for us, and we pay a millage rate on it, there's a significant change in expectation from a union member or paramedic only or paramedic firefighter who does transportation, and those aren't comparable numbers. Typically, the department that does do transportation, their wages are slightly higher. Typically, those departments are also more urban, although everybody would probably argue that we're becoming urban. But urban, I'm going to say, is South Florida, Tampa. So what that leaves us with is tomorrow we meet with the union. Our presentation to them will be the reduction in workforce. It will also be, if they approve that, we'll also come back to you. So we would, if we TA an agreement tomorrow at a 4% increase and the reduced work hour, then we go to the ratification vote. The union ratifies it, you all will ratify it. At the time of that ratification vote, we will do two things. We would say, we'd like to ratify whatever we tentatively agreed to, maybe tomorrow, and we would like to do this because we would like to do this in a way that gets 3 firefighters hired now. There's a similar phenomena with timing where before we can switch to 24 hours, we need to have 6 new bodies trained and on staff. So our proposal back to the fire department is going to be is 4% increase, wages go up, work hours go down. We'll try to get 3 new firefighters on the end of this fiscal year. We have the money. And then that gives us from potentially next Monday till April 1 to get 6 new firefighters on and get the reduced workload down. So what that means for the commission is if we TA tomorrow, it will go off to a ratification vote. If the union ratifies it, then we'll be back to you saying ratify with a recommendation to ratify the contract and give us permission to add 3 new firefighters this fiscal year. Commissioner, appreciate you going back there.
Mhm.
So,
And the same for the police service. How many would be as of October?
Police we won't tackle till next year.
Okay. So nothing this year, not till.
For police.
Okay.
Okay, so put those expenses in the hopper and compare, the deficit of 250,000. So mind you, the deficit that we have in there is at the current millage rate. Okay, so I think those are really aggressive changes, but now the bad news. If you stay at the current millage rate to accomplish the 4 major things that we have in there, the current millage rate is a 7.5% tax increase. So I put together this crazy chart, which is a 11-year synopsis on what have we done as far as the millage rate, has it gone up or down, and how has that affect taxes? Was it a tax increase? Was it not a tax increase? I won't go through each and every one of these. I'll remind you of some of the crazy times. Back in 14 and 15, we actually had a roll forward. And everybody's, what the heck is a roll forward? It's a roll back. I had to rack my brain. In 14 and 15, we were still having decreasing assessed values from when the world crashed back in 2010. So when you had decreasing assessed values and to keep the same millage, the same tax revenue, you had to increase the millage rate. We all forgot about that, right? We all forgot about that because if you saw Carrie Baker's presentation at the Lake Regional League of Cities, he had that number in there. Carrie didn't forget. It was a pretty good presentation, but because we've seen so much growth, and not only have we caught up from the decrease, now we have surpassed it. So there was actually roll forwards in 14 and 15 that we didn't take. We kept the millage rate the same, which is actually a tax deduction. Then we did some rollback. Then we kept it the same. Then we did some increase. So we've been very frugal with the taxes. In 24, we didn't increase taxes. We did increase the fire assessment fee. In 23, we did a modest increase. And so, long story short, the bottom line, over the past 11 years, the millage rate has decreased 8.16% every year on average. That's misleading, right? Because that's the millage rate, and the millage rate doesn't tell the story for the most part. It tells some of the story, and it's an important number. But I think that's an ability for Leesburg to brag. The millage rate has gone down 8% every year for the past 11 years. Taxes have increased on average 1.89%. That includes the proposed 7.5% increase this year. So even though 7.5 sounds like a crazy big number, it's still modest. It still has an overall tax increase to the residents of less than 2%. Okay, so those are percent numbers. What does it mean? I see note taken. Do you want me to wait? Commissioner? Okay. So what does all the percentage mean in dollars to the resident? Okay, another crazy chart. Okay, it's really hard to tell you what that means for the resident because of the 13,522 homes, I'm guessing, but that's probably about what our tax roll. No, it's not. It's that plus the villages. So now we're probably sitting around 16,000, 18,000 houses. Those values are going to go from a significant number of houses that are actually still below taxable value once you throw a homestead exemption to significant houses that are upwards of $1 million. So that number is impossible to tell you. So I did this sliding graph for you. And this is city only. If your house has had a taxable value after your homestead exemption in fiscal year 24 of 100,000, 150, I did it in 50,000 increments all the way up to 550,000. I would say our average house in Leesburg's probably around, Jim, 250-ish, something like that. Okay, so what does it mean? So let's jump to the $250,000 house. $250,000 house last year at the current millage rate, your city tax bill was $868. If you keep the same millage rate, your house is homesteaded, it can only go up 3%, so now your value is going to be $257.5. Now instead of an $868 tax bill, you're going to get an $894 tax bill from the city only. That's $26. So the 7.5% is probably on average somewhere around $25 to $30 for the average resident. So on this chart, that number spans from $10 to $57. I think the next question you have to ask is, well, Al, that's just the city. Remember, there's a bunch of taxing districts on the bill. There's the county, there's the school board, there's the hospital districts, there's the mosquito district, there's the MSTU for right? I keep blah, 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 blah. So this chart, I try to bunch up your total, I know I'm walking away, but your total tax bill. So the total tax bill in Leesburg, if everybody's millage rate, now look, there's six plus different taxing jurisdictions on your tax bill. But if everybody on there stays the same, your millage is going to be 15.8956 mils. You got to break that down, remember, into two parts. The school board still has a $25,000 exemption. All the other taxing districts have the $50,000 exemption. So if your house is worth $100,000, you're actually paying $100,000 in taxable value at all the non-school district taxing jurisdictions and $125,000 for your school board taxes. Okay, so then if you throw that and you do the comparison, assuming, I can't say that enough, assuming under these assumptions, don't come and say that was wrong, that was misleading. It's an assumption to give you kind of a rudimentary feel for what our change would be. The range then goes from 47 to $262 on your tax bill. So basically, I think I said 10 to 60 on this bill. So basically, if you take this number and you multiply it by 4, you're going to get in the ballpark. And if you go back and you look at that, about 4 mils, it's 3 and change, 3.4, so right? So say 3.5 mils divided by 16 mils, not quite 25% of your total tax bill. The school board throws it off because of that $25,000. So even if every taxing jurisdiction goes up, I won't judge whether you think that is an unreasonable number. And my guess is, from conversation around, we're all struggling with the same inflationary numbers. We're all struggling with the same issues. Electric is high for everybody. Insurance is high for everybody. Cost of employment is going up for everybody. So my guess, I think it's probably a pretty safe assumption that you're not going to see too many taxing jurisdictions go back to the rollback rate this year. Leesburg is probably the one of the very few, not the only, who has been as frugal with adjusting the millage rate. So I think that's an important chart so that you know if we go with the increased plan, we're making significant steps in changing service delivery with this budget. And so where do we go? We go back to where most every other jurisdiction goes, to your ad valorem rates, which is really where we need to be, and not in the process of milking our utility funds and falsely increasing those to run the general fund. We really need to develop a way out of that system. This budget almost gets us there. So let's look at where we are in terms of our other cities in Lake. We're the third lowest millage rate of all the municipal corporations. I think Fruitland Park, Leesburg, Lady Lake is an important one to look at because in Lake, Fruitland Park, Leesburg, and Lady Lake would be the villages cities, and so I think you can count on those villagers comparing tax bills, and our tax rate's not more than Fruitland Park, and it's less than Lady Lake. The other thing I will point out in this budget is
Said that backwards. All the way around.
yes.
But you're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
We got you.
I was already going to the other thing I really want
That was
to
just
point
for
out
the
with
audience.
this
Yeah, I was
respect.
gonna say, we got you.
The only other municipal electric utility in our region is Mount Dora. I don't know what Mount Dora's transfer levels are. I know what ours are. Next year, if you adopt this proposed budget, we'll look like every other city in Lake with a 6% franchise fee. So we're running our city now. Everybody always said, oh, Leesburg gets to do everything you want because you got that electric system. You approve this budget, that statement is now wrong. You are doing almost, and I still got to say almost every one of your municipal services without a significant electric transfer. You're doing it with a franchise fee, and your millage rate is still one of the lowest in the county. That's significant. So I won't belabor this chart, but it basically shows you where we've been since 2013 in terms of the electric transfer. That's one of my favorite charts I've ever done. That chart is significant. So let me jump into that. That's kind of, there's a couple more little overview slides. Any questions up to there? Okay, so where are we at in terms of overall revenue? We go from 33.4 to 37.5 million with the areas of significant increase, which I've already covered. You always got to throw in the pie chart, right? Because that's what us government folks do. We got to have pie charts. And then really just kind of sum up, I wanted to do a SWOT analysis of strength and weaknesses of the proposal, because I think this really sums up very well what this proposal does. So first, with the strengths, we increase public safety. I think that's significant. I think of most of the communities in Lake, I'm not going to say we're unsafe, but we have room for improvement. And this budget really tackles that. We continue to boast a low millage rate and very frugal with the tax dollars that we spend and collect. This budget moves us closer to looking like a non-electric municipal corporation, where I think the state is going to continue to push. And with that said, we still have reasonable reserve levels. The biggest thing with the reserve levels is the vacancies have created that cash for us. We've been slow to spend it. So that's a good thing. Weaknesses. Because of the way we frame the growth in the police department, we're still counting on about $600,000 of new growth to come in from fiscal year 26. I think we'll get there. I think that's a reasonable gamble, but I do need to inform you that's a little bit of a gamble. The main reason for that gamble is if we say, okay, we don't want to take that step, then I think the chief is going to say, then we need to reschedule, and then we're going to kick the can down on growth of the police department. So I think we need to take that gamble. But then again, we can take that gamble because we've got the reserve levels to potentially cover it. And it will also hurt us in capital improvements. but I'll get to that in a second. The other weakness means, even though it's kind of an oxymoron, even that there's less electric funds means higher taxes. So, yep, it's an accomplishment to get the electric fund down, but that's equating to higher taxes, but see strength. Even with doing that, we still have the third lowest millage rate in the county. We continue, another weakness, not to use general revenues for capital improvement projects. So the last couple of years, we've leaned on the American Recovery Act, we've leaned on CRAs, and we've leaned on discretionary sales tax to fund our capital improvements. Next, potentially there will be a need to use reserves, general fund reserves, for future CIPs. Namely, the three would be if we do parking, if we do market, if we do stuff downtown, if we do Susan Street. Probably need to go look at grabbing some reserve money. We may, if the gamble on the police department's not right, also might need to use some reserve money to cover the gap for 26. That, if we do that, that really needs to be the first priority. Cover that gap before we do anything else. We've been good about that, though. And then the final thing is there may be need. We don't have this number for you yet. When we do health insurance on Thursday, we were doing really good in the health insurance up until the last 2 months. So our average payment and all claims out needs to hang around $500,000 a month. Two of the last 3 months we hit $850,000 and $750,000. So that's going to put us about $1 million out of whack, depending on where the trend goes. So I just throw that out there to you because if that $800,000, $750,000 trend continues for the last quarter, we're going to need to find some money. We've been propping up the health insurance fund. I think its balance is supposed to say around $2 million. We're going to cut through that again, and we're going to have to subsidize the health insurance fund again. There's two ways to do it. Increase the employee contribution or find cash. I'm going to recommend that we don't go back to the employees. Health insurance coverage from us, I think, is one of the biggest not foreseen benefits that employees get. And I will make a gamble with you. We are about to do a survey of our employees. There will be very few of them that says, thanks for the health insurance coverage. But here we are saying we're not going to kick the can onto them, and we might need to go grab some of that general fund cash to keep their rates on their health insurance down. That's the strength and weaknesses analysis of the proposal. There's your cash chart. So you're sitting on, and this is an estimated number. Brandy's always conservative, so we'll probably be somewhere in there around that $15 million number, which gives us some room to do some of the things we talked about, bring on the firefighters early, have some cash if we want to peel off a little bit. But my guess in here, if you're being super conservative, maybe there's about $5 million to bleed off. And that puts us down around 10, where our reserve requirement's still about 7.5. So at 10, we're going to have still a good reserve. But basically, this is really pay as you go. We've squirreled away this money for the last several years, as you can see. And so, we're going now to our cash levels to do things, whether it's capital improvement. My hope is that it's more capital improvement than personnel. Because, capital improvement, we can fill in the trough. If you start under budgeting and using your cash to pay off that budgeting with your reserve money, that's where we'll see us get in a hole. I think we're going to avoid that, but it needs to be talked about. That is the overview.
When you talk about core Leesburg, when we're talking about that,
Yes.
so define, are we including in core Leesburg new development in South 27? Are we including 44? Or are we just talking about old Leesburg when you say
Yeah,
core?
good question. Let me go back. So let me hit you with the answer. Is this number right here. Villages and core Leesburg.
Okay, so villages.
Villages is everything on north and south of 470.
Gotcha.
Everything else is
Core
core
Leesburg.
Leesburg.
There you go.
Hodges, Anthony, Bar Key, Silver Point Springs,
Right.
Battaglia, Orange Bend,
Yes.
Liberty Park,
On and on.
all those other 39,000. What was the number on Jay's?
And we're sitting at right now-
39,562 minus 14,185. That's core Leesburg.
And we're sitting right now at 4% increase on those,
Five
roughly.
ish. Yes.
5-ish.
Ish.
And for us to come to this, what does that have to be?
It doesn't have to be anything.
If it just stays the same?
If it stays the same, then we're going to have the same core. And now we're in the argument, but now we digress, right? Now, if we have zero growth, right? Is that
None
a
of
good?
the developments come.
None of the developments on the books come. Not likely.
Right.
All of the developments come at once. About equally is not likely.
Right.
But I, when Dan made the presentation to y'all a few meetings ago about the comp plan growth, what we've seen sustained, 4%.
Okay.
I think that number continues. The question becomes there is obviously a cloud of Orlando, megalopolis growth that's coming into Lake. And where we see it now is, we see it over the Mount Doraway and Sorrento, 46, that corridor. And we see it Claremont, Groveland, Mascot, and Mineola, right? So obviously that growth is coming this way, but there are a significant number of lots. I don't have that chart for you. I think you really see it in the assessed value chart that Carrie Baker put out to the cities on June 1st. What you see is a slowdown in Claremont, if you can call it that, right? You see their growth coming back. But you see the double-digit growth in Mineola and Groveland. You see those subdivisions growing. So I kind of think that's indicative of the cloud coming, right? So it's not quite to Leesburg. And yeah, I think it does come to us, but I don't think you're going to see every one of our subdivisions grow. I don't think you're going to see 38% next year.
Gotcha.
And so then their question is, well, we want zero growth. Is that a good thing? That's an elected official decision. That not your city manager decision. I'm here to help you manage it if you got it, and manage it if you don't.
Right.
And how do you break out the CRA growth, the 4% out of all of it? Which would you say?
So the CRAs are rooted in that $1 billion of new growth. Mm-hmm. That new growth is the increment. So that growth, that 360,000, is the portion of the estimated portion of the growth that gets coupled with the county's contribution. So that doubles, and then it gets divided by 3 at varying levels. And I think the way it goes is the number one grower of the CRA is the 441-27. Mm-hmm. The next grower is the Carver Heights, and then the slow grower is the downtown. So that's the overview of the budget. The next portion of the presentation goes into kind of now the micro and the detail of each and every department. Do you guys have any questions on the overall? This part of the program, you get as fast or slow as you want, and then we finish it up with pontification and direction from you all. So let me take a quick break. And we move forward. This is, a mixed, this is where I become redundant, no change, about the same, right? Because I already told you all the big stuff. Okay, so general fund, that slide says 1 million words. You really see where the growth is. It's police, it's fire, it's public, it's police, fire, it's recreation. And then the other big one, you go, whoa, executive. That's the reason that's the village's payment of fire assessment fees. So That's where Barry buried it. Okay, so city commission, your change in your budget's about $566. Any questions?
What's the promotional services?
The promotional?
Promotional activities. 4810.
Okay.
60,000.
Make sure you turn your.
Is that in the commission budget?
City Commission.
I think it's the Christmas.
It's under operating expenses.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be the Christmas, giving everybody the bonuses.
4810.
Yeah, gift
Yeah.
cards.
So it's 57,000 holiday gift cards. So that's what we give everybody $100. We give everybody $100 plus 572 or whatever, so they get a 100. And then the MLK sponsorship, the Chamber Galley is in there. That's $1,500. Probably want to take that out. And the Chamber breakfast. So those who go to the Chamber breakfast,
That's the
there's
year-end.
$500.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're thinking that the $100 Christmas bonus is better than the Christmas.
That's the.
thing?
I'm gonna say that's the feedback we get from everybody. They like the money
Instead of the
versus
party, you talking about?
versus the party.
Yeah.
And now that was
I'm in
significant.
agreement.
I think the party cost us $7,500.
No, it was more than that.
Oh, and not everyone can
Yeah.
come to the Christmas party.
Yeah.
It was more, definitely.
And we kind of started that back in COVID when we couldn't have it.
It was
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so everybody good on that?
Can you explain the, excuse me, would you explain the city commission? Well, we were just saying it looks like the same.
I think what her question is, we got the 5% bump too, and went up
Four.
like
yes.
1%. That's our question.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it
I
looks
see.
like some of the benefits went down, so, so somebody might have had like fitness or something like that. Somebody may not have it now, so like there's probably $80 there that went down. Insurance went down a little bit, so it's coupling all that together. There is 4% in here for stuff. It's other stuff going down, so.
all right.
Big money.
Executive.
Ooh-wee.
Executive has a couple of branches. So the first one's public outreach. That's basically the payment to Lakefront TV.
Yep. Yep.
Could you give a breakout of the communication expenses? I mean, the increase there?
Alright, so
What is that considered a communication expenses?
it's usually internet. I don't know if we're paying internet. I can pull it up, but let's see if we. So we got it's internet and cable for the Lakefront TV, Verizon. Okay. Hold on. So it's the telephone bill. It's
Okay.
$324. Verizon. They have a public outreach data plan for $481, and then Comcast is $2,640 for internet and cable at the Lakefront TV studio.
Okay, thank you.
Administration. That's city manager, right? So that's ostensibly about the same. Any questions in there?
How many employees do we have?
It's 2.70. I mean, Pam gets the executive office manager is split with PIO, public outreach, and the airport. She has a portion that we split off, but it's
Okay.
just the two, really three. But.
City clerk. Actually down a tick. Questions on clerk? City attorney, that's pretty much all contractual, based on estimate to Stone and Gherkin. Miscellaneous.
This is where we put in like the employees can do the vacation buybacks in there. the payment to the villages, and then the debt service transfer that we have going on for debt service.
So the debt service is,
What we can't use DST on.
right, which vehicle, right?
No, this is the amounts. Remember the
Oh,
DST?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. There's a portion we pay with that.
Into finance, and finance has a couple divisions, accounting. But it hasn't changed too much. Customer service, that's down.
Let's do the credit card, please.
There you go, there's your big savings.
Yep.
Yeah, what was that, 400?
It was like that, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that bill went to nothing.
Procurement, that's down. Warehouse, down just a tick, and those are all your finance department divisions. Human resources is a little bit up, but it looks pretty much the same. Any questions there? IT has the two divisions with IT, which is about the same, and GIS, which is about the same. Any questions there? Police has the forfeiture fund, the police itself, the education on the impact fees. So we've kind of pretty much talked about this one ad nauseum. That's the increase in police services from the 12.6 to the 14.18 million. The lion's share of that $1.5 million increase is all in personnel.
Does the villages pay police impact fee?
We do, yes, they do.
So that should have went up significant then.
Yeah,
I
but the
think
police impact fee is
it's on
rather
the next
small,
slide.
so it's on the next slide, right? So,
Or it's the next one, sorry, it's coming, next one. So we got-
so
right
we're
now
sitting
got-
on 1.3
But we're
million
getting ready to
bucks.
use them.
What are you using them?
The vehicles and
Oh, the
the
vehicles.
radios, and
So-
this is how we're gonna buy
so
that.
using the police impact fees is actually going to the expansion of the force
Yep.
because associated with adding 12 officers is 12 radios, 12 light bars, 12
Gear, weapons.
cameras, to
Yep.
all the
I mean,
gadgets.
not trying to put you on the spot, but do you know what we're charging for police impact fees on single family?
It's about $200.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's under 200.
Yeah, it's like it's under $200. I want to say fire's like 250, and I get it for you. It's pretty
Okay,
cheap.
Because we don't collect fire impact fee on the villages, or we do, and then we remit it back to them since they run the fire services.
Did we get, I think, I don't think we charged them on fire impact fees. Let me double check,
Okay.
because that would have been in the
Well,
363
I'm just
agreement.
wondering if the villages built that many houses this prior year.
That's
how
where,
much- How much our police impact fees increased?
Oh, it did.
about that number. They weren't sitting on much before
No.
that. I'll get you an exact number.
Okay.
You write that down?
I did.
The other stuff in there is then there's the forfeiture money. So the opposite side of the house from impact fees. So impact, when you move in, you pay an impact fee. Forfeiture money, what they confiscate, it goes towards fighting crime. How much is in that account? Do you know?
Education?
No, forfeiture.
It was on the other slide, it was like 130. Go the other way, next slide. There you go, 130.
Where's the 130?
Keep going, next slide. There you go, see current available.
Oh,
balance.
current avail, right there. So there's a
Yeah,
$130
they've
in the
been
forfeiture
building
fund.
that one back up.
Plus an estimated, so Chief Iozzi's going to confiscate about 30 grand worth of stuff this year.
No, we're gonna use,
Actually, we should have budgeted more for that with the increase, right?
Let's get busy.
And that rounds out police. Fire looks similar, so your lion's share increases. Let me take a step back too. One of the big numbers that you'll see difference in there is the pension funds. If you look at those individual growth lines, those continue to. I think the fire is hanging around 29% of salary, and the police is 15-ish.
yeah,
If I remember from that actuary report.
14.26.
14.26 on police. So the city kicks in 14.2% as payroll to cover our required share of the pension fund, and
42 point is fire.
42 on fire. 42 on fire is big. Doesn't look uncommon to other cities, and 15 on police is a little bit low. My guess is probably going to see 35-ish for fire and closer to 20-ish for police. So with police and fire out of the budget, that's about 60%. Public Works has a bunch of different stuff. So street maintenance, that remains about the same, just a subtle increase there. Facilities, taking care of all the facilities. That's what's
Most of it's insurance, though.
most of that
50
is
grand
is the insurance increases.
Because of new buildings, and we're insuring them.
Grounds, admin. Any questions on public works stuff?
Just a broad question. We couldn't hire enough guys. And we entered into some contracting with Bright, what is it? Yeah, something, for mowing grass and things.
We still use, Brightview is more of the right-of-way issues that we do. So Dixie, 441, 27 corridor, that's Brightview. Venetian Gardens around City Hall, that's internal. Is that a fair?
Yes. We do have some vacancies filled currently with some contract employees from Brightview because
They're starting to migrate to the city. Is that what you're saying?
There's quite a few vacancies.
They're filling the vacancies because we have a 50% vacancy rate in grounds. So we supplement those vacancies with contract employees from Brightview as part of the contract until we fill those vacancies.
Gotcha. My question was more, how much are we relying on, we were hoping that was going to be a stopgap, or at least I was, by.
It was last year, yes, sir, because we brought that to commission.
Right.
And we did bring the vacancy rate up down to almost full, but then once the summer months come, we lose.
Got to have more, yeah. Okay. Good.
Community developments, planning and zoning. Any questions there? So we're paying about the same process, all the PUDs. Housing.
And you're getting ahead of me.
No, I'm not.
All right. No question.
The big change, that 25 of the 33,000 is sticking back in some demolition money. Library. Any questions on that? Recreation impact fees. I skipped rec impact fees. And then, so we go, recreation has got recreation and rec impact fees. This is the recreation breakdown, so it's up about 30 grand. Actually, we got this down a little bit.
We're going to take that 23 and buy it.
Because that 23, we're going to buy that with surplus monies this year. So that number's, it's only going to be about 7 grand
That
over.
helps us in our fund balance number.
Okay.
We on recreation right now?
Yes.
Yeah. Have we looked into pay for the director with the added workload and the oversight?
That's going to be at your all's discretion. I think that's a tough one. I think Travis did receive an increase, when we went back and reviewed department heads. As a result of Bike Fest, I also gave Travis and Maggie some additional comp for the workload they did. If you all want to revisit that, let me know. I think it's a difficult question because of how adjusting everybody's department head pay kind of bumps into everybody else. So I'm going to tell you, I think Travis is probably where he needs to be.
I didn't hear the question. I think I know it was.
Travis's workload and oversight
Okay.
has increased.
Obviously Travis and Maggie do a great job. Travis' workload increased. He also got an assistant that we pay 80 grand.
Can I
And
question?
they got an extra week of vacay on the house.
Is that because of Bike Fest?
Yes.
Question to go back to housing. Contract services? The 28,
Back here to, so you're looking at the 28 there?
just give me a breakdown, please.
What page are you on?
I'm on 146.
Easier to
Yeah, sorry.
tell us the day. There we go.
I'm sorry, that is the demolition. It's in that line.
Okay,
So
that
we
is
just- yeah,
the
it's
part of the
25,000.
25 that's
Yeah.
there? Okay.
Sorry, yep.
Next in the rec is the aquatics. So once you talk about, there's a bit of an increase in aquatics. I think that's chemical related.
It's related to keeping the pool open longer, which affects temporary labor, utilities, chemicals, all the expenses went up because now the aquatic center is staying open longer, so
Which is a good thing.
it just costs more, that's all.
So remember when we come back to the military.
Yeah.
Somebody
Marina,
got to pay.
Marina's about the same. I know I skipped over Marina real quick. The biggest change is weaving in the budget, the Bike Fest numbers. So we got Bike Fest balanced. You know, we're gonna spend 468, and we're gonna take in 468, roughly based on our experience this year. Any overage we're gonna go back to the reserve that we created. So we got 1.5 million in from the partnership. This year, it was probably 1.5 minus 50 grand. So now, you know, whenever we're gonna go over, or under, we'll nip and
Got something
tuck
to play.
away from that reserve fund.
Good.
So we won't spend any of those cash dollars that we got from the partnership, except for Bike Fest, or unless you all direct as otherwise.
And you said 1.5. I think you meant 150, right?
I did.
Okay, no, I wasn't being smart.
I know, when I
Okay.
did the math there,
I was hoping I was wrong. It was 1.5.
I missed up my zeros. No, it's 250.
We got 250.
Okay.
So we're
So-
down to 200-ish.
Okay, no, thank you.
So, you know, that gives us about 5 years to blow 50 grand before we have to rethink it. Yeah,
I was
hopefully we,
If everything happens just like this year,
correct.
which,
I have a question now, on Bike Fest. How much would we be out that's already been spent leading up to Bike Fest and we get a complete just rain out?
we got insurance.
Man, so what's, I don't know what the answer to that question is. You know, so obviously their
I guess
exposure.
I'm asking what
What kind of exposure?
Yeah, what kind of risk do we have based on, you know, the weather that, you know, we've already got fixed expenses we have to pay regardless of whether we have the event or not?
I think you have to go back and look and draw on the experience from COVID to have that worst experience. And what we saw, which makes a question, I'm not evading the question, I just think it's an extremely difficult one. Do I think you're going to lose $500,000 if we don't have Bike Fest? No. Do I think you have somewhere between 0 to 100 grand exposed? Yes. The areas that the partnership found success in is obviously a lot of the expenses go down. The biggest out of Bike Fest is paying for the entertainment, and so that's about 200 grand. So if we have to cancel, you know, it depends when. If it's a total wash, you know, then most of those companies honor the commitment and they come back at another time or they refund the booking fee. If we've had a booking fee and we have the big show Friday night, say that costs 70 grand, and we don't make the money on it, that's where all these variances come in. I don't think you have $500,000 exposed. I'd say you got 6 figures exposed. And I also think through the experience that we had this year, trying to buy insurance for that exposure is not paying off because those insurance numbers are so big. It's worth making the gamble because of the other ways we can mitigate it. You have an exposure there.
That's what I figured.
You have an exposure there.
Okay, so, okay.
And I would say if you got to beat me down and give you a number, I'm gonna say it's six figures.
Okay, so it's a pretty big gamble.
What's the breakout of the, for the record, excuse me, for the Bike Fest? What's the breakout of contract services, the total, please? I mean, can we get it?
I think I can get that note. I don't think it's in there. I think it's probably in the spreadsheet. So I'm pretty sure that's gonna be the entertainment, the cleaning. I can get you, and it,
Probably the security.
yeah, it's
the
all,
food.
it's pretty much,
The forklifts, the tent rentals, the
Yep.
stage rental.
Okay,
yeah, it's,
So if you go back to that detail we gave you on our summary, that 468 should match pretty close with those breakdowns on it. Where there's like 167,000 buying boot.
okay.
They got about, so recreation impact fees, we haven't proposed spending any, but just remember this number for next Tuesday night. There's a $507,000 in recreational impact fees available to spend. None of that came from the villages. So that's all core Leesburg growth.
And that's not in your general fund reserve cash?
No.
Okay,
That's in a separate reserved account.
that's what I
Come
thought.
Tuesday, I'll have some recommendations for you on where you spend it.
can
Okay.
only be used for growth. That's why it's gonna
Okay.
be growth.
Perhaps Susan Street is a good spot to put it.
Does it have to be used within the next year? I mean, is it any time frame on it?
And it has to be used on an expansion of a recreational programming.
Okay.
So so Susan Street qualifies.
Can you marry that, maybe?
The parking lot downtown does not.
Right.
That wraps out the kind of the details of the general fund. So any questions, comments, concerns you have? I'll leave you with revisiting our proposal for the taxes and keeping it the same rate, which is the 4.7% or 7.5% increase. On Monday's agenda, you will have the famous DR 420 that sets the maximum millage rate. I will recommend to you that you set the DR 420 at the 3.4752. Technically, you can go above it, but if you go above that, then you have to advertise on your own. If you're going to catch the county bus, you've got to set the DR 420 so that when the county sends out the trim notices, our proposals are in there, which avoids us having the expense of doing that. We will recommend to you that even if you don't want to have the the current millage rate on there, you still put it on the DR 420. You can always go down, but you can't go up.
So you're saying, well, I'm a little confused on the 7% increase.
If you keep the current millage rate of 3.4752 mils,
Right.
that is a tax increase of 7.5%.
Okay, well, is it the property appraiser is limited to 3% valuation increase, correct? Homestead.
If your home
Yes.
is homesteaded, you're capped at 3%. All commercial property is capped at 10%. That's why those numbers aren't coming
So
out.
you're just kind of merging in the middle.
That's why you got 7.5.
Okay.
Because remember, and remember on the slide too, so that's kind of the trick there I threw at you too. I gave you a number for residential. I didn't give you a number for commercial. And commercials, everything that's not residential is the rest of that number. I can't remember the breakout of our tangible and non-tangible property taxes, which are commercial, industrial, property, and all those type of things. We have a pretty big number.
It's 205 million.
250 million. So I'll throw it to you this way. Of the $3 billion of taxable value, 250 million of it is not capped by 3% growth. So that's the expensive stuff. So really when you do these tax increases, it's not seen so much from the homeowner, it's seen more by the businesses.
I got you. And,
I mean, nobody likes, go ahead, Jack.
no, I was going to say, go ahead, Mike. I got
No.
one other question.
I mean, nobody likes to talk about tax increase. Did I read the chart right? We were down last year. We took it down 13% or more last
And we
year.
were net neutral. So last year we took.
But their effective tax rate, I thought, went down on your chart.
Last year we did. Last year was, I think, another creative budget year because we increased pay significantly to get everybody up to $15 an hour and blah, 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 and did all those changes and write all that stuff. I think it was like $2.6 million of pay increases for everybody, which is like.
Can you throw that chart back up there? That one chart that showed what we had your 11 years of history on the millage rate. I was just trying to impress upon people that we took it down aggressively last year.
So last year we did it. We did another spending increase to benefit employees.
But
we increased the fire assessment fee.
Right.
But we reduced taxes enough that we covered the increase in fire assessment fee. So it was
Okay.
no net.
Okay, thank you. It's all coming back to me now. Thank you.
Yeah.
I remembered the
So-
negative 13. I was trying to offset. Okay.
So at the current millage rates, for the chart you had, we're here, and then we got two cities in Lake below us. Everybody else has a higher rate.
Yes.
Right there. Yeah.
Unless
And we
they
would
all,
be
unless
actually-
they all start lowering it, which
And chances of that happening are
slim and none are.
right. So it still puts us in a very favorable position by keeping the millage rate.
I would argue yes.
Is my okay.
And I'll just close with, I just want to point out, what we did last year. And we took it down, 50 basis points, the millage rate.
Just as we move into tomorrow with the IFF before us, are you guys, and look, the non-committal, just kind of, I'd like to go into that negotiation with the feeling that you guys understand where we're headed and that we can bargain in good faith with, we're trying to get workload down and
Yes.
keep pay up at 4% with potentially bringing on more So, okay.
Yes.
I feel comfortable. at
Sounds good to
that.
me if you can sell it.
It does, yep, and it doesn't commit you guys to anything because at the end of the day, you got to come back and ratify whatever we tentatively agree to as well. And the IFA has got to
But not the
tentatively.
18.
Yeah.
With the union, whatever they present tomorrow, that's what really.
No, so
This is like
here's
the
where we're
response.
at. The management side of the table, we're going to pose to the union the shorter work hours effective April 1. We bring on 3 initially. We're going to have to ask your permission for that and a 4% pay increase.
And you have the money.
And if you all do this, we have the money. They'll say yes or no. If they say yes, we'll do what we do, a tentative agreement, and management and the union say, okay, then the union goes back and they have a ratification vote. So all the members of the union has to pass, by 50% plus one vote. And then if they ratify it, it comes to you all. If they don't ratify it, we're back at the table. And then we got to re-TA and renegotiate. If they do ratify it, it comes to you all. If you all don't ratify it, we're back to the table. And we got to start the process again until both of you ratify the agreement. But typically, we don't want to TA anything that we don't think will get passed.
You talked about reducing hours. I think I heard 2,900 to 2,400, whatever it was. Are they salaried? Or are they?
What was the top? 2910?
We're going from 2704 to 2496.
But are they hourly or salary?
Hourly.
Okay.
They're hourly.
That's what I assumed they were. Okay.
Yep.
So their pay.
Their check ain't going to change.
Okay.
Right.
It's-
Their check ain't going to
They'll work less
change,
time
and they'll
and the
work
check
about
ain't gonna
300
change.
hours a year less.
Okay.
That's an annual number. 2710,
2704.
2704, so two.
Yeah, 20.
Okay. Thank you.
200. Yeah. Got it.
You'd put some ideas that various commissioners had.
I let off with that.
Yes, you did. When are we going to discuss some of those?
A lot of the ones we have, I don't know if we can kind of hit, let's go by commissioner on that, unless you want to hit, where if you want to go with yours. The commissioner, you had to lower the millage rate and the advertising for Leesburg. I know Commissioner Cannell's been after trying to get some advertisement money for specifically for South Leesburg. I think it's been a hard nut to crack. I think if we bring in a marketing firm who does that, my guess, 15 to 25 grand. I don't think that's a hard number, but I think that's a specific, I think the issue there is that's a specific targeted area, and I think the commission needs to jointly approve that. If you guys want to throw that in the budget, at this stage, I'm going to tell you, we probably can 25 grand. We might be under that, but I think that's something that you all need to jointly agree on. Just like, if we're going to do something, when it starts to get into a project that benefits a specific district, I think you all need to talk about that. So that's above my pay grade.
Well,
so
I mean,
this is the time to pitch your idea.
I'm saying South 27. I mean, that's where the majority of our growth is at right now, and there's a major lack of commercial development down there. Now, for years, the city had a department that part of their task was economic development of the city. And I just feel like from a commercial standpoint, we haven't grown very well. And I just feel like that's a small amount to pay if we can attract a couple, 2, 3 businesses to town. I think it's money well spent.
Is that not what we're spending with LEAD? Aren't they?
We spend that with LEAD. Commissioner, this is really an argument to sell off to the other commissioners. We spend economic development money, about 25 grand. It's $1 a head, so it's about 27,000 we spend with LEAD. So yeah, while we don't have an economic development department, we do have LEAD and we have county services, and that's how we've generated our economic development efforts. It's up to you guys to judge whether you think that's fruitful. The other side of the equation I'll also say is, look, we have the constant conversation about growth. These numbers are clear, where the growth is and where the growth isn't occurring. Commercial growth goes hand in hand with residential growth. Every stump speech I've ever given when on panels for economic development in Florida, we see our service economy as growth. And if you're in Missouri or the Rust Belt, it's what comes first, the manufacturing job or the people who will be employed that get the manufacturing job. In Florida, the argument in the service economy that we have is, where does the commercial investments come based on where the rooftops are on? So that's a phenomena. So I hear you, Commissioner. I've heard you for 4 years, and the growth numbers in South Leesburg are still not there. You still have Arlington Ridge. You have the unincorporated growth, and there is growth in South Leesburg. We can't deny that. And every PUD we've adopted has a commercial segment. So if we want to push the envelope, I think your argument is with the commission.
There's a tremendous amount of rooftop units in South Leesburg. And I'm not talking about just specifically in the city limits.
Right, sure.
If you look at all the rooftops down there, there's a tremendous amount of homes down there. And I don't feel like we do anything to market ourselves for some commercial development for that area. I mean, there's nothing on 27 down there. That big, because we don't reach out to nobody.
What are you looking for specifically? I
We
guess.
have done that. We have given effort to putting out a pamphlet and to market our demographics. We did that 2 years ago, a year ago, was it Big Tree? And we didn't get much response, but I appreciate the effort.
I was just curious what you're trying to accomplish.
The two main things I'd like to see attracted to South Leesburg 27 is retail and some quality sit-down restaurants. There's nothing down there. And I really feel like we have plenty enough rooftops, incorporated and unincorporated areas down there to sustain that if we would just reach out and make some of these companies aware of what's going on and what's down there. And, you know, if we're talking about $20,000, I mean, $20,000, okay? Well, if you land one business, I mean, there's your money back right there for just one business. I don't think this is far reaching to ask to you know, that hire somebody to maybe, you know, try to market to Leesburg a little bit. Like I said, for years, the city had a department. It was / another department, but
Yeah.
that had the title of economic development.
Right.
I just don't feel like we do much
And
at all to
I
advertise
think
ourselves.
they were focused on job creation, and I'm not trying to be argumentative. I think that I think it's more demographics driven. But I mean, I'm not against what you're saying. I'm just saying, with the rooftops coming, I think it'll be here. It's coming soon. I mean, you know, good restaurants, retail, they are looking at demographics, population numbers, income levels. They have all that data. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying I think it is growing to a point where I think you're finally going to be satisfied. I think with the growth.
You know,
we do nothing to, like I said, to self-promote ourselves. We're waiting for them to come to us, find us, instead of us going out and seeking them.
Here's what I would suggest as a compromise. You know, depending where the commission's at, I can guarantee you that between now and August 1st, we'll go down 25 grand. So before we go down the first 25 grand, we'll throw in the study.
You're suggesting bringing someone in to do market, some type of analysis to
Yes,
things?
ma'am.
Okay, great.
Would that be just for South Leesburg or just the entire
Be
city?
just for South Leesburg, as Commissioner Cannell has requested.
I think we don't give enough credit to the corporations that run these restaurants that you would like to have. Like, they haven't done their homework. They can't be profitable there yet. I mean, or they would be there.
I don't
and
know
if
I
they're
don't-
not profitable, they close. Like
I don't
Olive
know.
Garden.
I don't know
or,
they even know what's going on because we do no outreach at all.
I think
Commissioner Cannell, when I first got on the commission, you'll love this. Numerous people said to me, "When am I going to get a Chick-fil-A and a Panera Bread?" And I just smiled and said, "Yeah, I can't control that. You know, it's demographics." Well, we got Chick-fil-A because the demographics finally caught up. And usually when Chick-fil-A hits, Panera Bread's not far behind, but because they are both looking about the same demographics. But I'm not drawing a line in the sand or saying I'm against it. I'm just saying I am trying to say it is demographics driven with all the rooftops. Look, let's use the residential as an example. We didn't market that, and it's exploding. I mean, heck, people are complaining about it. So,
I think residential a little bit different than the commercial, but
well, I guess I'd also say the commercial will follow. I think it will. You just want it sooner. I understand. I understand what you want.
If we reach out, it would have to expedite it. I mean, and like I said, you're talking about 20,000, 25,000. You land one restaurant or one retail shop. There's your tax base back within a year or two.
I don't know if this is it, but do we leverage a lead and ask them to do stuff like that? Since we're already paying that, I think
they're more job. I think they're more job creation. I think. I don't know. Help me out.
Yeah. I've asked Lead.
Okay.
I think we should leave the conversation where it's at. The first 25 grand down, we go. We'll stick it back in the budget. When we review this, I'll remind you whether it's in there or not. We have reached out, so I wouldn't categorically say we haven't reached out, Commissioner. We have reached out. I have talked to Lead. Lead will tell you what I'm telling you. We have sent out pamphlets. The pamphlets to market South Leesburg are pre-villages. So this is really the first year now you got 3,000 villages houses sitting over there. Maybe that makes a difference. So I will try to swing it in the budget and ask the rest of the commission, remember to, before you vote on the final budget, if it's in there or not. It will probably be able to get it in there. I'm sure when August 1 comes around, we'll find 25 grand.
I was going to say, because the last time.
But I'm sure your commissioners are going to poke you about taxes. So that's a quid pro quo game.
Well, when we refer to reaching out, I mean, that was at least 3 years ago.
With the pamphlet that you reviewed.
Exactly. And I'm not saying there was anything wrong with what we did, but it was 3 years ago.
I understood.
And did we get anything with it?
3 years ago.
In the last 3 years, did we get anything?
And again, I'm not saying.
I know, it's hard. It's hard. I'm just bringing up the other side.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, Jimmy, but the other thing too, and nothing against what we did, staff did an excellent job.
Right.
But That's not their forte. That's not what they do for a living. They did an excellent job with what they did, but that's not their background.
Yeah. Okay. It's, yeah, I just have more, I just think Darden Restaurants knows where they want to put.
Well, I just think it's every city should have some money set aside to market theirself.
Okay.
I just believe they should.
Any comments?
Any other comments?
So we have the holiday coming up. Monday, we have our regular meeting. Next week, Tuesday, we have the special revenue fund, so we'll get into the CIP discussions. Then Thursday, some enterprise funds, and then
Thursday is
yeah, so enterprise funds Thursday. Then we're back to the special meeting on the 15th and the regular, so we've got a busy month ahead.
Move for adjournment?
Move for adjournment.
Aye.